Can you feel that? Feel-thany feel, Tano? We've reached the end of the line. List week 2020. We're topping it off with my top 50 albums of the year. Yes, 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 yes. Let's do it. Let's do it. Starting with number 50, it's Dope Body with their Quarantine Rock Rager, Homebody. 49 is Denzel Curry as well as Kenny Beats on their glitchy internet hardcore hip-hop crossover, Unlocked. Following that, at 48, is King Cruel with the Despondent Man Alive. Boldy James and Sterling Toles drop some of the most devastating storytelling as well as epic jazz-infused hip-hop production of the year with Manger on McNichols. 46 is Dan Deacon with the grand and colorful Mystic Familiar. Following that, at 45, it is Chloe and Halle with the sleek, snappy, catchy, and versatile Ungodly Hour. 44, Deerhoof, indie veterans, drop what I think is one of their better LPs in a while, Future Teenage Cave Artists. Following that, at 43, it is a somewhat progressive, experimental, and a very groovy linear rock record from the band Horse Lords, The Common Task. 42, futuristic and groundbreaking pop artist Poppy comes through with one of the most fun and extravagant metal records of the year. I disagree. Then 41 is the band Undeath, who I think comes through with a gruesome modern death metal classic on Lesions of a Different Kind. With number 40, the Hyam Sisters drop some of their catchiest material to date on Women in Music, Part 3. And then Freddie Gibbs and Alchemist complement each other quite a bit on their collaboration this year, Alfredo at 39. 38 is Idols with some of the most heavy, crushing, punishing, and socially urgent punk music of the year on Ultramono. 37, it is Dorian Electro with a high-concept, multi-genre, short collection of tracks that dives into incel culture and a host of other things, My Agenda. 36, From King to a God, Conway the Machine comes out ahead in the Griselda camp with this incredible hip-hop record. Then 35, it is The Strokes teaming up with Rick Rubin on their new experimental way forward with the new Abnormal. 34 is Liturgy's Origin of the Alimonies, a high-concept theological metal opera that infuses multiple genres together and gets down to, I guess, the narrative origins of a lot of the religious aspects of Liturgy's conceptual DNA. Certainly one of the most unique metal projects of the year. Then following that, at 33, Big Thief's Adrianne Lenker comes through with a very stripped back and bare set of quarantine songs and ballads on Songs. That one is quite intimate and moving. Then at 32, it's Jeff Rosenstock, No Dream. Jeff continues to use pop punk and various strains of underground rock music to explore themes of depression and sadness and societal ills. And at 31, Quelle Chris and Chris Keys team up once again for Innocent Country 2. Chris just continuing to prove himself as one of modern hip-hop's most unique and thoughtful voices. Number 30, it is Perfume Genius with Set My Heart on Fire Immediately. Mike Hadrius continues to find different stylistic lanes to push this project in, totally kills it with whatever sound he's trying his hand at, and just delivers a great song in the process too. Number 29 sees Japanese rock band Boris going full thrash metal on No. This was a really exhilarating listen. Then following that, at 28, it is Phoebe Bridgers with one of the most emotionally cutting records of the year, that is Punisher. 27 is this groovy and alternative Meridian Brothers record, Cumbia Siglo 21 or XXI. But yeah, if you ever wanted to hear some very left field, colorful, animated, and maybe somewhat tongue-in-cheek plus experimental Cumbia originals, and a great revision in the mix there too, give it a try. It's great. 26, I want to shout out a couple of Nicholas Jar projects, but primarily his Against All Logic 2017 to 2019 record here. I think what Nick Mike continues to do here, pushing the envelopes in house and techno with some deconstructed stuff here and there on this project too, is great. Really his most standout record of the year, and he came out with a few. I also loved his Synesis record, which featured a lot of ambient cuts and more experimental cuts, was a lot more varied and I think unpredictable. And again, you know, you could sort of give that a sub shout out on this little number here as well. But primarily it's the Against All Logic, but just let it be known, Nicholas Jar was pretty prolific this year, and a lot of the material was quite interesting. Now we're hitting the halfway mark of the list, and breaking into the first slot in that is Rina Sawayama at 25 with her Sawayama record. I think Rina shows herself to be one of the newest and brightest and most exciting faces in pop. If she is starting off this great on her debut, I can only imagine how amazing things are going to sound maybe 4 or 5 years down the line. So pay attention, be ready, be psyched, because her songwriting, the production, and the way that she fuses elements of pop and R&B and even rock and metal music too here and there, it's just a really bold, bright, exciting. Then at 24, it's banger after banger after banger from Run the Jewels, RTJ4. I think LP and Killer Mike put out some of their most solid material to date here. 23 is Imperial Triumphant Alphaville. This New York avant-garde metal band continues to break ground, try new things, and just bend the mind. 22, it's HMLTD with West of Eden, a solid batch of tracks, a modern post-punk classic in my opinion, and a very in-your-face series of critiques of Western society packed into one catchy anthemic song after another. A lot of tracks that bend and blur gender lines as well, interestingly enough too. So yes, HMLTD off to a great start there. Then at 21, it is Lido Pimienta with Miss Columbia. Absolutely loving the ways that Lido finds creative crossover and overlap between art pop, electronic music, Colombian music, indigenous music, and brings them all together on this wondrous and magical LP that is quite versatile as well. Number 20, Rap Ferreira, Purple Moonlight Pages, fantastically jazzy, smooth, dynamic, and versatile instrumentals all over this LP. Philosophical, deep, thoughtful, witty, colorful rhymes from front to back. Rap Ferreira, or Rory, or Milo, or Scallops Hotel, his pen game and trademark delivery is in rare form on this project. I think this is some of his best stuff ever. Then at 19, it is singer-songwriter Leanne LaHavas with a bit of a love-influenced concept or story kind of record on this self-titled here, whose instrumentals are recorded and performed in a very live and intimate way, sort of a refreshing approach for her. Love the way this LP grooves and sounds and comes together. Following that, at 18, it is Charli XCX with her quarantine epic, How I'm Feeling Now. Charli continues to push the hyper-pop narrative, as it were, with great songs, great production. This thing is intimate, it's personal, it's raw, it's rough around the edges, and I think it's also what just a lot of people needed in 2020. 17, Flaming Lips, American Head, another concept record from them that's a little more narrative-based, with lots of beautiful tunes and lyrics from Wayne Coyne and the gang, reflecting on his brother, his past, childhood, all these memories. It's quite a trip, this record. Not just a sonic one, but an emotional one too. Following this, at 16, it is Sevdaliza with Shabrang. This is a hauntingly gorgeous album that dives into elements of, I guess I could say, trip hop and R&B, art pop, ambient pop, songwriting and vocals on this record. The sound of this record is so quiet and pure and pristine and beautiful and simple, and I'm also loving the way some of the Persian sounds and musical influences seep in subtly here and there. It's a very strange and, I'll say once more, haunting listen. Number 15, it is Canadian occult rapper, producer, songwriter Backxwash with God Has Nothing to Do with This, Leave Him Out of It. Easily one of the most hard-hitting, tortured, eye-widening, and harrowing projects this year. Just loving the way that Backxwash raps, writes, flows on this project, also produces and finds crossover between hip-hop and obviously strains of trap music, and on top of that, metal. 14 is Mac Miller's posthumous Circles, which dives pretty deeply into his emotions and mentality at the time that he was writing and recording this record, and sees him successfully transitioning over into a more singer-songwriter type of approach creatively. Tunes are great, production is incredibly tasteful, and it's just fantastic front to back. 13 is the latest full-length LP from country singer-songwriter Chris Stapleton, also vocalist extraordinaire, starting over, just loving the tunes, the writing, the wit as well on this project, and loving the emotional versatility too. The track about his dog, the track about being tempted by the devil, the track about just Arkansas kicking as much ass as it does, and the covers too, and a bit of an outlaw edge on a few tracks as well. And once more, just the vocal performances are stunning on this thing. He really outdoes himself, in my opinion. I think Chris has really solidified a sound at this point, and he is just seeing what heights he can bring that sound to on this record. And I think he really outdoes himself here. 12, it's Gorillaz, Song Machine, Season 1, Strange Times. Damon Albarn brings on some fantastic collaborators. He writes up some great songs, doesn't lose the balance between Gorillaz and the guests who are in the mix. The production is some of the best that has landed on any Gorillaz album in a long time. And just some stunning appearances again from the guests that I mentioned earlier. Gorillaz, I think, are just back. This record is peak Gorillaz. And the way this project was crafted and the way it's sequenced to really emphasize the single power on this record, each track slaps, I think that sort of makes this a somewhat unique experience too. Then at number 11, just before we transition into the top 10, it is the Koreatown oddity Little Dominique's Nosebleed, a colorful, narrative, and surreal hip-hop album where this guy details some horrific car accidents that impacted his health majorly as a child, and goes down memory lane in a variety of other ways too. And the way the lyrics and also the production and the various sound effects on this LP play out, it's almost like you're experiencing the memories along with him as they're rolling along. It's a very strange experience. Yes, we're in the top 10 now. The top 10 Runarino. Let's do it. Starting with Underneath, Code Orange. That's the 10. Just loving the way that Code Orange is so seamlessly fusing together these elements of metalcore and noise, alternative metal and rock and electronics. To me, this feels like the future of metalcore. This feels like the future of metal music. Not that I predict that all bands will sound this way in 5 to 10 years, but as far as rock and loud rock on the whole goes in 2020, this to me seems like it's looking the most forward than like anything else I heard. Following that, at number 9, Natalia Lafourcade, She Does It Again, Un Canto por Mexico, Volume 1. Cannot wait for Volume 2, especially given how beautiful, extravagant, moving, and romantic and inspiring this collection of tracks was. I mean, Natalia does her thing, essentially celebrating various songs and stylistic strains from Mexico's rich musical history. The instrumentation, the track list, everything is just so immersive. I really feel like I'm deep into this sound, deep into this vibe as I'm listening to this record. Plus, the vocal guests on this thing are great, and Natalia even revises a few of her own songs in the process of this thing too, and the new versions come out great. So, yep, absolutely loving this one. Then following that at number 8, it is the massive 3-disc, 90 plus collaborator project from Matmos consuming flame open exercises in group form. Man, when it comes to experimental music, electronic music, this stands out to me so much in 2020. Maybe it's not one of the most talked about records of the year, and I understand why. It's a little abstruse, as well as overbearing with it being as long as it is, Lord. Plus, the way these tracks are sequenced to be like these three very lengthy, never-ending pieces in a way. Yeah, I get it. It's a lot. But when I actually listen to the music, and you're free to kind of listen to each disc on its own, it doesn't need to be consumed just all at once. I have to say, I think Matmos is coming through with some of their most adventurous material to date here. I think at least one of these discs, if you sort of separated it out, might end up being one of their best albums ever. So, yep, Matmos, I love that no matter what era of their career that we seem to be in, the duo is always coming through with a surprise. The duo is always challenging us in some way, and just doing shit that is consistently exciting. Number 7, it is More Mother and Mental Jewelry teaming up for this More Jewelry project, True Opera, which stylistically is a true Blue throwback to just the early days of noise rock and no wave, and I think really kind of reducing things, boiling things down to those barest, most noisy and freakish, animalistic elements, and just writing some great tunes in that vein and giving some great performances too. More Mother, I think, has stood out over the past couple of years as being one of the more unique vocalists and rappers in the underground, and I think that her style applies itself very nicely to this particular genre of music, absolutely killing it on one track after another, and the very tight, thin, and frantic guitars and drums on this record too just are great. Again, just loving the true no-wave aesthetics on this thing. Number 6 is the beautiful and inspiring series of songs from singer-songwriter Laura Marling on Song for Our Daughter. Whew! I think this is easily Laura Marling's best record today, and I think that she got to that point by just delivering a series of tracks that are absolutely no BS whatsoever. Great lyrics, great writing, so straightforward, so intimate, so raw, so pure. Some truly heartening and also emotionally devastating topics and focuses and narratives on some of these songs too. So yeah, you know, when I think of emotional heaviness in 2020, I do think this record, this album sort of stands out to me in that right. Number 5, it is one of the most instrumentally and aesthetically gorgeous albums of the year, in my opinion. That is Ichiko Aoba, Windswept Aiden. Quite a stylistic change of pace for this artist on this record as well, with previous key albums being very bare, very acoustic, very guitar and vocal oriented. This time around we're getting more strings, more backing instrumentation, but the beauty and simplicity of Ichiko's music is not lost in the process. Number 4 is one of the most major statements in hip-hop this year, that is Blu Exile's Miles. It's been a while since these two teamed up, and geez, when they got back together, they made sure it was a momentous occasion with 90 minutes of material, gorgeous and wonderful, intricate, jazzy instrumentals, and some of Blu's best writing to date, especially when it comes to topical stuff. And he's been on a topical trip lately, especially with his last album, but this time around diving into themes of just his past, music, and kind of detailing the history of hip-hop and jazz music, and also going into all of the societal ills too. Undoubtedly, it's a pretty significant statement, and anybody who considers themselves to be a hip-hop fan, if you have not heard any of this record in 2020, I mean, catch up. Number 3, this duo kills us with kindness on Peaceful as Hell, this Black Dresses record. Love this album. Love this album so much. The songwriting is great. The indie aesthetics are great. The noise pop aesthetics are great. This album is raw. It's in your face. It's unapologetic. It's abrasive, and yet also incredibly addictive and catchy. Just loving what this album represents for homegrown music and DIY, and even the Bandcamp scene, even as Black Dresses' status as a functioning music entity is questionable at this point, given the breakup shortly after the release of this album. At the time of me doing this video, there has been like a newly released, like fresh single has dropped, but what that means for the future of the duo, I don't know, but fingers crossed on new stuff coming out at some point. Number 2, it's Clipping. Visions of Bodies Being Burned. The trio comes through with another helping of their horrorcore, their very unique film-influenced brand of horrorcore that is unlike any other kind of horror-influenced hip-hop out there. Now with Clipping, as usual, we have top-notch rapping, lyricism, storytelling, high-concept tracks, great features, and of course the production and sound design on this project is insane. Absolutely insane. And even though I haven't quite figured out whether or not this is my favorite Clipping project yet, that does seem to be the case for a lot of people reviewing and listening to this thing, and I can understand why. Even though this is a very adventurous and abrasive album in many respects, it's pretty accessible too, you know? So if this is a musical trio that you've been curious about for a little while, or even if you're just hearing about them for the first time and you're looking for something to kind of introduce yourself to their sound, their music, I mean, it could easily be this record. I guess just understand going into it, this is a horror-inspired project, so everything here tends to run a little creepy, a little eerie, a little, I suppose, gruesome, though themes of death and feelings of fear in Clipping's catalog are nothing new at this point. I think kind of going in a horror direction really only solidified a lot of the sounds and ideas that they had been toying with previously in a lot of ways. So yes, that's my number 2 record. Highly recommended. Love that LP, and I love all of the LPs that I talked about up until this point, and think you should check all of them out, especially the number 1 album if you haven't already, but that would be the new Jessie Ware record, What's Your Pleasure? Wow. What an incredible LP from Jessie Ware. I mean, previously I have not been a big Jessie Ware fan. I've loved some songs and hits and key tracks here and there, but for the most part didn't get a lot out of her catalog. But damn, did she come through and kill it on this new record, where she is throwing it back to a lot of different styles of dance music from the 70s and 80s and seamlessly pulling them all together in a somewhat anachronistic way, and in a way where they all seem like really cohesive and complementary. The songwriting is killer, the grooves are irresistible and endless, the production is refined and wonderful, the touches of strings are great, the synths are great, the rhythms, the drums, and the album is just so long and just so groovy and just so rich and just so powerful. It's indulgent, it's decadent, it's a religious experience on this gorgeous ass album, and I don't think I can say enough nice things about it. This is just a fantastic record, immaculate record, which I hope you guys have taken the time to appreciate as well. If you haven't, please do, along with the rest of these albums if you have the time as well. Information and reviews on which ones we can down in the description box, obviously. And yeah, you're the best. You're the best. This has been a good, solid list week, despite the year being as horrendous as it was. But I'm glad at the end of all of this, I was able to come to you guys with a batch of records that I was really proud to say, like, you know, these are some good-ass albums that came out this year. And, you know, they're definitely worth your time. They're definitely worth your focus. So, you know, give if you can over the holiday break and beyond. And, yeah, that's it. You guys are the best. Love ya. Transition, have you given these albums a listen? Did you love them? Did you hate them? What would you rate them? You're the best, you're the best. What should I review next? Hit the like if you like. Please subscribe, and please don't cry. Hit the bell as well. Over here next to my head is another video that you can check out. Hit that up, or the link to subscribe to the channel. Anthony Fantano, Best Albums 2020 forever.